Hey everyone, before we get into it, please make sure that you scroll down to the description below the video and check out the reveal trailer. I've also included links to the alpha opt-in, the Pax Dei Discord, Twitter, and website, Steam page, alongside my socials. Any support is always appreciated. Watch out, as there is a new player that's joined the MMO game. And no, I'm not talking about Ashes of Creation. Sorry, Stephen. I'm talking about Pax Dei. It's been about 9 days as of recording this video since the trailer was unveiled and took social media by storm. But if you haven't heard of it, that's okay. Let me help you out. I've done plenty of reading and research to save you some time, but that being said, please make sure that you do check out the Pax Dei YouTube channel as they do interview the team who describe their vision of the game. So what is Pax Dei? According to the developer Discord, Pax Dei is a social sandbox, player-driven MMO experience that will offer you a vast, beautiful playground inspired by the dark Middle Ages, its fables and myths that you will fill with your own stories. The game is currently only available for Windows and is available to be wishlisted on Steam, but there is intent to have the game available on all devices, including mobiles and console. The emphasis on this game is a question Mainframe poses: what world will you make? Which goes well alongside the sandbox aspect of players' decisions, to which the company has really driven that message in by stating that you, the player, will work to create everything in Pax Dei's world. The game is inspired by medieval Europe and the folklore cultivated from its rich history. From the clips I've seen, it has a beautiful aesthetic with their village, towns, buildings, and environments. For those of you who don't know what a sandbox MMO is, well, it's defined as a game with a virtual world or society within a game, i.e., here are tools, players, go do something with it. So it essentially is player-driven mechanics that usually doesn't have a predetermined role. So if you compare it to games like World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy, they have a linear progression system. You know, talk to this guy, do this, hand quest in, now go talk to that girl, do that, and hand it, and so on and so forth. In a sandbox MMO, everything and anything you do will contribute towards your experience. So these are games like Albion Online, EVE Online, Old School RuneScapes, and so on. So the burning question is, who is developing Pax Dei? And that is a great question, because that will define whether or not an MMO will thrive or not. Unfortunately, that's just how the genre works. The game is being developed in Unreal Engine 5 by Mainframe Industries, a ragtag team from around the world with various experiences on different titles such as EVE Online, their creative director, and have worked in well-known companies like Blizzard, CCP, Remedy, etc. There's approximately 70 people who have been working on the game and it has been in development for over 3 years, so essentially since March 2019. They have great investors like Riot, you know, the guys who made League of Legends, who have invested $8.3 million. There are other investors like Twitch, who are co-founders, King.com, the other co-founders, and Microsoft, who are all involved. This doesn't necessarily mean that the game is guaranteed success, but it does bode well and provides a dose of optimism which we all need. Now, let's talk more about the game. Like most MMORPG gamers out there, I've been jumping in between the titles like World of Warcraft Classic and Retail, Guild Wars 2, Final Fantasy Online, Elder Scrolls Online, New World, and the list goes on. But finally, we're starting to enter an exciting time in this genre, where we have a plethora of exciting, new, inspired games that are coming out. And I'm sure as fans of the genre, we're really chomping at the bit to play. So what do we know so far about the game? Well, the fundamentals of Pax Dei is to maximize player engagement and will be catered for both the casual and competitive players. They will cater also for solo players and groups, with subtle soft incentives for cooperative play, like allowing you to choose how much interaction you like, but none of it is forced. Like any game, playing alone will be more challenging than playing with others. Each server will be able to hold up to 20,000 players and will be completely open world, meaning there will be no private instances. However, the servers will be sharded, meaning that there will be multiple servers, each with their own community, but those shards themselves will be very large. For me, that challenges the open world concept and kind of confuses me, but this is a kind of wait and see kind of space for now for me. The server regions are still not released, but we know that they are wanting to cater for America, South America, Europe, Southeast Asia, and potentially Oceania. Cross fingers. But again, we need to wait for confirmation. There won't be strictly PvE, PvP, RP servers, but there'll be one server that includes all those mechanics to cater for the variety of players. And in terms of the pay to win and monetization factors that people are usually considered associated with MMOs, well, that has been riddled with the genre for far too long. And Mainframe's official statement is, while we're not ready to communicate about monetization, I can say we're most definitely not building Pax Dei to be pay to win, and we won't be selling time skips. Time skips being things like level boosts. Let's dive a little bit deeper into the actual game itself. Now, there is only one race in the game, and that is being a human. I know this sounds very boring, but remembering that this is inspired by medieval European fantasy, you could potentially let this part slide. Although, I can already see a demographic that won't like this and won't play the game for this reason alone, and that's completely fair enough. You won't find any predetermined roles like your traditional MMOs such as tanks, healers, and DPS. What you will find are skills, specializations, weapons, armors, abilities, spells, all of these combined, which will all contribute towards someone who wants to be a tank, for example, or who wants to be a caster DPS. So the game will, to a degree, support that holy MMO trinity of the tank, healer, DPS. It's just that you're not locked to your one role. Your character isn't set to that one specialization. You have the fluidity and choice to build yourself however you want, and there is no right or wrong way of doing it. Your gear will be the main source that will help determine that role, and I'm putting that in quotation marks. I'm doing the air quotes right now. There's nothing stopping you from getting to max level through crafting only. Maybe you want to be a master blacksmith, for example. Go for it. The ideal scenario would be the community who decide what these are and what it looks like through the crafting and profession systems. Speaking about gear and weapons, they haven't revealed much about gear progression other than the fact that it's one of the ways to level up in-game and unlocking your abilities. However, what they have said is that gear will take damage. The wear and tear will reflect on the gear piece in-game. Such a minor detail, but amazing addition to the immersion. There won't be guns or muskets as the timeline is set prior to the invention of these weapons. And the general idea is that if you pick up a piece of armor or weapon or tool, then you should be able to use it. There will be a wide variety of meaningful weapons and future expansions which will look at bringing in new weapons, but will only consider ones which meets the game's combat systems and designs. There is a list, but it can't be shared for obvious reasons. In terms of inventory, Mainframe has stated that we want the logistics to matter, but more on crafting, building, and trading. We don't want to be too punishing and limiting with your personal gear and stuff you need for PvE. The combat system is action-style combat with an aim-it aspect, so similar to New World. There will be melee swings that you will need to time, but it won't be as complex as controlling the direction of the attack. The idea is to not be hotkey smashing, and also not have to be super timing sensitive, so they're looking for that balance in the middle. The goal is to be able to make more anticipated decisions and to be able to read the encounter. You'll be able to swap weapons on the fly and cast abilities that you believe is the most opportune. Let's talk about PvP and PvE. Now, there will be PvE and PvP aspect like most MMOs. PvE will consist of players' exploration, dungeons, raids, and so on and so forth, and they have stated that PvP is a key element of the game. PvP is opt-in, so that it will be clear when you enter PvP mode or when you enter a zone that is marked for PvP. You will never be forced into PvP. If you do not want to engage in PvP, then there's plenty of PvE content in the game, so much so that you can go all game without interacting the PvP aspect. Mainframe aren't diving too much into this as of yet, but they have stated that going back to their fundamentals of the game, they want to incentivize and give players a good reason for PvPers and PvEers to work together. When asked about instant PvP content, their response was, generally on instances artificially split up the population. We want to bring people together. So there probably won't be things like WoW Battlegrounds as an example. For PvE, there will be large open world dungeons and raids. Yes, you heard me right. Open world, meaning that you and your guild or clan will be venturing through a huge raid system of tunnels and caves, and there will be another guild or clan in the same place. We will need to keep a close eye on how this will end up working, as I can potentially see issues with gated progression and looting concern. Also, the game is going to challenge you. You won't be told how many people you will need to succeed in a raid, for example. The game won't tell you where to go. You and your team have to figure that out on your own, so get your piece of paper and pencil ready. The dungeons, as I said before, will be open world, meaning they'll be persistent, and respawns and swarming with monsters. In terms of questing, as previously explained, this is a sandbox MMO, so you won't get your traditional NPC giving out quests and will most likely differ from player to player. Quests can be found via notes and researching discarded artifacts. They will either lead you to empty buildings or zones infested with monsters that will attack you on sight. Sounds like it will be quite unforgiving, and another reason why you probably don't want to go at it alone. I mean, you make great memories with friends, right? But I guess the question then begs, how do I level? Well, it will be a combination of progressing your character's skills, whether that's crafting or something else, and equipping different armors and weapons. Your characters won't be locked to anything, and you'll be allowed to explore all aspects of your character, meaning that you won't be gated from certain professions because you picked one and not the other. You can start leveling a caster and then realize, you know what, I just want to get stuck in and be a melee only character. Also, something to note that the map is huge. I mean, like massive, like Brobdingnagian massive. We know that each map is 10 by 10 kilometers, so that's 100 square kilometers. Heartland, which is the map, is only just one part of the world that we know so far. The map does have bodies of waters like rivers, lakes, and oceans which you can wade or swim through. Sorry, New World, step aside. But there won't be any ships or boats in the initial release. However, internally it is a hot topic, so something to keep an eye out on future patches or expansions. Let's talk crafting and professions. Now, there will be a building system in Pax Dei, which again, will be player driven. This is different from the housing system. We're talking about building a town hall, for example, for players to wander through and appreciate the architecture, or even player owned shops. The customization is limited to the imagination according to Mainframe. They want to allow the buildings to be unique and have character. They also want players to demolish everything and rebuild as much as you want. So as you discover new materials and skills in your professions, you can continue to upgrade your plot. The way buildings work is that players will be able to claim fixed plots of land and use the materials that they've gathered and the knowledge they have to build. If the player ends up removing the plot, the building there will decay over time. Multiple players can join their plots together to have more space to build. Sounds like you can build a small or large community, which sounds freaking awesome. You can destroy your own building, but you won't be able to attack, destroy, or rob other players' building. Your house is where you can store your earthly possessions and are sacrosanct. What happens elsewhere? Well, that's still a mystery. In terms of crafting, yes, you will be able to chop down trees, mine with your pickaxe, forage for materials, hunt and harvest, similarly to New World. resource like trees cut down will grow back. And yes, there will be fishing minigames for you enthusiasts. There will not be any musical instruments initially on release, however, something that is discussed a lot internally, and once they agree on how this will work in the game, will be one of the first things to come out. Now, there will be player housing in this game, but it's still being kept under wraps. What we do know is that they will be using the same sort of mechanics when you're building your other structures, applying that to when you build your house. So, claiming a plot of land, using the materials to build the house, and the building will decay if the plot is removed. As I've noted in the gear section of the video, the general idea is that if you pick up a piece of armor, weapon, or tool, then you should be able to use it. The game is employing a use your instincts policy, which means that if you pick up an axe, then you would probably want to use it to cut down a tree, similar to a pickaxe for mining. But would you really use a pick over a two-handed greatsword? I mean, some people might, but generally speaking, you'd vote for the bigger weapon. Something interesting I did find is that when they were asked about religion being an aspect of the game, the response was, as the setting indicates, the lore of the world is inspired, among other things, by the various ideas of divinity in the early Middle Ages in Europe, the history of creation as well as previous creation, the nature of things and entities residing outside of the natural world, and how all those things and beings interact with the world today will be revealed over time. It is deep, complex, and actually very exciting. There's also comments that there will be a marriage system to the game. You can build a church or find a location that's meaningful to both players, appoint a player as a priest, and get married. They don't elaborate too much on this so far, but it is something that's on their roadmap. Economy. Now, we can't talk about crafting without talking about economy. Like the fundamentals of the game, the economy is 100% player driven and is a driver to maximize that social interaction. People will be able to use the in-game currency when trading. There will be important exits for in-game currency out of the economy as well. Trading will play a massive part in the game as players will want to use their crafting as a service to offer new gear or weaponry, for example. As before, these pieces may have dents or scratches depending on the materials used or the player's crafting skill level, which will determine the price of the gear. All items and resources will be freely tradable, which means there is no bind on pickup or soulbound items. You will need to build and maintain your own storage. There is no bank in-game to hold your crap. You could create a co-op storage with your friends to share crafting items, for example, but most likely the main central for storage will be your home. Now, there's still questions that we don't have answers to. Things like, when will Pax Dei launch? There is no ETA as of yet. Although they believe the alpha is soon on the horizon, there is yet to be a date for this, and whether or not it will be covered under NDA. How much will the game cost? Will it be a one-off purchase or subscription-based? Although that isn't yet known, Mainframe have quoted that monetization is something very important to live services titles, and we want to make sure that we get this right. At this time, we're not ready to discuss this. We will have more to come on this as more from Pax Dei is shared. I cannot reveal now how players will pay for the game. What I can say is this: we are well aware that people have different opportunities and preferences when it comes to paying for a game like this. Our aim is to have a flexible system that allows anyone who wants to play the game to be able to do so and contribute in a way that fits them. Now, that is a bit vague. I don't know from reading that if that means this will be a one-off purchase or subscription-based or something completely different, but again, a wait and see. Something also that did come up was a concern about the latency and how Mainframe will handle that with such a massive server and location-based region for servers. The quote from Mainframe is that latency is always a problem. Agree. And what contributes to latency is very complex. This is not just connectivity speed. Let's just say we're very aware of latency and have some pretty good people working on this. One other question that was asked, and again, didn't quite have an answer, is about the magic or the casting in the game. Now, magic in the game will not be limited to combat, which to me means that there will be environment, puzzles, and objects that will require to be manipulated in order to complete the quest or for zone progression, crafting, etc. As of yet, there is no data shared about the spells. However, they quoted that it will be the kind of magic people actually believed existed back in the early Middle Ages. So to me, this could be your typical mage casting fireballs, or witches cursing people and turning them into frogs. So in conclusion, Pax Dei is a sandbox MMO with no current release date, which is being developed by an experienced team who have worked for AAA gaming companies or on AAA games in the past, with plenty of funding and massive investors. There has been in-game testing which provides hope for an alpha soon. We can expect a fantasy game which shares similar mechanics to EVE Online, New World, and similar MMOs. Pax Dei is really focusing on going back to the MMOs of old by designing the fundamentals of the game to maximize social interaction and make it completely player-driven. This is definitely a game to be excited for and to keep an eye on.